You have 24 hours to demolish that eyesore, or we're calling the sheriff. That's what the CAMB president screamed at me right before I revealed the secret that would destroy her entire world. There I was, 3 days into building my dream cabin, when this woman storms onto my land with a clipboard and an attitude. Victoria Ashworth, CAMB Queen Bee, demanding I tear down everything because it violates community standards. The smell of pine sap from fresh lumber mixed with her choking perfume as gravel crunched under more angry neighbors' SUVs. She's waving legal papers, threatening massive fines, acting like she owns the place. Little did she know, I had information that would flip this power game completely upside down. Information that would turn her threats into the most expensive mistake of her life. But before I tell you how one phone call legally obliterated an entire CAMB, drop a comment. What would you do if neighbors tried to steal your land, and tell me where you're watching from. CAMB Nightmares Unidos all. Let me back up and tell you how this nightmare started. My name's Marcus Brennan, 45, recently divorced electrician who inherited 5 acres of Colorado mountain paradise from my eccentric Uncle Silas. After months of courtroom hell and living in a cramped city apartment, this land felt like salvation, a place where I could build something real and maybe convince my teenage daughter, Emma, that her old man wasn't a complete failure. Uncle Silas was the family mystery. Disappeared into the mountains in 1980, showed up at Christmas smelling like wood smoke and diesel fuel, always muttering about land having more secrets than trees. Most relatives wrote him off as the crazy hermit uncle. When his lawyer called saying I'd inherited his property, I figured Uncle Silas knew something the rest of us didn't. The land was breathtaking. Creek water gurgled over smooth stones, hawk cries echoed off granite cliffs, and the sharp scent of pine sap mixed with wild sage created nature's own perfume. There was an old concrete foundation where Silas had started something, plus a workshop that looked like it belonged in a frontier museum. Standing there, breathing air that didn't taste like exhaust fumes, I felt hope for the first time in months. I cashed out my 401k, quit my city job, and started building a modest log cabin. Nothing fancy, just a solid home where Emma could visit weekends and see her dad building something worthwhile instead of tearing his life apart. The rhythm of hammer on nail, the satisfying bite of saw through timber after months of lawyers and paperwork. Honest physical work felt like therapy. Day 3 of construction, she appeared. Victoria Ashworth emerged from a pristine white BMW X5 like some corporate angel of death. Mid 50 seconds, designer business casual, clutching a leather portfolio like a shield. Her heels clicked against the rocky ground with military precision, and her perfume, some floral assault weapon, clashed with the mountain air so violently it made my eyes water. Excuse me. She marched across my property like she owned it. Are you the individual responsible for this unauthorized construction? I set down my circular saw, noting how she pronounced individual, like it left a bad taste in her mouth. Marcus Brennan, building a cabin on my land. You are Victoria Ashworth, Pine Valley CAMB president. She flipped through papers with theatrical authority. This construction violates multiple community covenants. No permits, no architectural review, no environmental assessment. Frankly, this rustic approach threatens our property values significantly. I looked around at pristine wilderness stretching to the horizon. What community? I don't see any houses. The Pine Valley Homeowners Association governs all residential properties within our jurisdiction. She produced an official-looking document. Your uncle signed these covenants when we formed 6 months ago. You inherited his obligations. 6 months ago. Uncle Silas died 8 months ago. She handed me a cease and desist order, demanding immediate construction halt, plus a bill for $2,500 in accumulated violation penalties. Remove all materials within 48 hours, Victoria announced. Daily fines begin at $500, doubling weekly. We protect our community standards very seriously. The threat hung in the mountain air like smoke, but then she delivered the real message. Let me be frank, Mr. Brennan. Her eyes swept over my work clothes, beat-up truck, and calloused hands. This isn't the type of neighborhood where people in your situation typically thrive. We maintain certain expectations about resident quality. I'd hate for your daughter to be embarrassed by any unpleasantness. The mention of Emma hit like a punch to the gut. This woman had researched me, knew about my divorce, my financial struggles, my kid. Are you threatening my family? The words came out colder than I intended. Victoria's smile was sharp as winter wind. I'm offering friendly advice. Some battles aren't worth fighting, especially when you're clearly outmatched. She climbed back into her BMW, but paused before driving off. 48 hours, Mr. Brennan. Don't make this harder than necessary. As her taillights disappeared down the mountain road, Uncle Silas's final words echoed in my head. Don't let anyone push you around. I stared at the cease and desist order, then at my half-built cabin. Victoria Ashworth thought she had all the power. She was about to discover how catastrophically wrong she was. Victoria didn't wait 48 hours. She came back the next morning with a lawyer and handcuffs-level confidence. A beat-up Honda Civic pulled behind her BMW and outstepped the saddest excuse for legal counsel I'd ever seen. Douglas Crenke looked like he got his law degree from a Cracker Jack box. Cheap suit, coffee-stained tie, briefcase held together with duct tape, and desperation. Mr. Brennan, Victoria announced with theatrical authority, you're being served with official legal documents. Cease construction immediately and prepare for financial consequences. Crenke nervously shuffled papers. Pursuant to Pine Valley CAMB covenants, you owe $15,000 in retroactive violation penalties. Furthermore, you never received proper CAMB disclosure documents during property transfer, voiding your ownership claims. $15 grand for building on my own land. The smell of Crenke's nervous sweat, mixed with Victoria's choking perfume, created this toxic cloud of legal intimidation. I'll review these with my attorney, I said calmly. Victoria's laugh cracked like ice. You can't afford an attorney, Mr. Brennan. Save yourself the embarrassment. The minute they left, I drove straight to the county courthouse. Betty, the friendly clerk, helped me dig through property records. The musty smell of old documents and fluorescent light buzz created this detective movie atmosphere as I uncovered something that made my blood boil. The Pine Valley CAMB was formed exactly 6 months ago, 2 months after Uncle Silas died. I remembered my divorce attorney once telling me that timing in legal documents is everything, and this timing was impossible. The boundaries were drawn like a perfect target around my property, including just 12 houses. My 5 acres represented 60% of their total land area. That's mighty suspicious. Betty whispered over the property maps. Looks like someone drew those lines specifically to trap your uncle's land. I pulled more records, and every CAMB member was either Victoria's relative or worked for her husband's construction company. This wasn't community governance, it was organized crime with a clipboard. I'd read enough legal thriller novels to know that dead people can't sign new contracts, and neither can you be bound by agreements made after you already own the land. Time for my counterpunch. I called Sarah Kim, a razor-sharp real estate attorney. Her office smelled like fresh coffee and pure determination. I called Sarah Kim, a razor-sharp real estate attorney. Her office smelled like fresh coffee and pure determination. This is legally impossible, Sarah said, spreading documents across her conference table. You cannot retroactively bind a dead person to new covenants formed after their death. I've seen CAMB scams before, but this is brazen even by their standards. We're filing countersuits, Sarah announced. Harassment, false claims, intentional infliction of emotional distress, plus investigating how they included your property in boundaries drawn after ownership transfer. But Victoria escalated fast. 2 days later, she called an emergency community meeting without inviting me, obviously. My neighbor Jake attended and reported back over beers on my porch. The evening air carried wood smoke from distant fireplaces, mixing with pine forest scents that reminded me why I'd fallen in love with this place. She's got people terrified, Jake said, claiming you're some dangerous drifter with criminal background. Complete lies, but fear spreads faster than truth in small communities. Then came the digital warfare. Victoria created a Pine Valley Community Safety Facebook group, posting my photo, stolen from an old union newsletter, alongside warnings about transient criminals threatening our children and property values. The comments were vicious poison. Get this predator out. My kids aren't safe. Sheriff needs to act now. But Victoria's arrogance became her downfall. In her rush to prove the CAMB had money for legal action against troublemakers, she posted their financial records publicly. Those numbers told a shocking story. $847,000 collected in special assessments over 6 months for 12 houses. That's over $70,000 per family for what? No community amenities, no shared facilities, no infrastructure projects. I'd learned during my own divorce that legitimate expenses always have paper trails. When lawyers can't show you exactly where your money went, it usually went into someone's pocket. Sarah nearly choked on her coffee when I showed her the Facebook evidence. She just publicly admitted to massive financial fraud. Victoria handed us a federal case on a silver platter. The next morning brought Victoria's nuclear option. A county inspector's truck pulled into my driveway. The inspector, clearly uncomfortable, handed me a citation for multiple building violations that would shut down construction completely. "Sorry, buddy," he muttered, avoiding eye contact. Orders from the top. Someone's got serious pull at the county office. The metallic taste of corruption hung in the mountain air like smoke from a distant fire. As his truck disappeared down the mountain road, I realized Victoria had crossed a line she couldn't uncross. She'd escalated from civil harassment to government corruption, using taxpayer-funded officials to settle personal vendettas. But she just handed me the nuclear option. Federal agencies don't just investigate financial fraud. They investigate public officials who take bribes to harass private citizens. Victoria thought she was playing chess while I was playing checkers. She had no idea I was about to flip the entire board. Victoria's next move came at 3 a.m. with the sound of breaking glass and the acrid smell of diesel fuel burning my nostrils awake. I stumbled outside to find my construction site looking like a war zone. Someone had taken a baseball bat to my lumber pile, scattering 2x4s like giant pickup sticks. My generator lay on its side, fuel soaking into pine needles with that sharp chemical stench that made my eyes water. Roofing nails glittered across my access road like deadly confetti, strategically placed to shred any tire that dared cross them. The message was crystal clear. Victoria was done playing legal games. By sunrise, I discovered my truck sitting on 4 flat tires and an anonymous EPA complaint in my email claiming I was destroying sensitive wetlands. The wetlands in question? A tiny seasonal creek that had been babbling through my property since before Victoria was born. But the psychological warfare was just beginning. Around noon, cars started appearing across my driveway entrance, not completely blocking access. That would be, obviously, illegal. Just positioned so I'd have to perform automotive gymnastics to reach my own land. When I approached the drivers, they claimed to be concerned citizens, exercising their constitutional right to park on public roads. The taste of manufactured innocence was more bitter than the diesel still lingering in the air. Then came the fake safety signs. Official hazardous construction zone. Authorized personnel only. Warnings sprouted along the mountain road like poisonous mushrooms. They looked legitimate enough to fool my contractor Pete, who called in a panic. "Marcus, I got 3 customers asking if I'm licensed for hazardous waste cleanup," Pete said, his voice tight with worry. "Word spreading that your site is contaminated. I can't afford to lose other contracts over this." Victoria had weaponized my community connections against me. I remembered reading somewhere that the best con artists always turn your own resources into weapons, and she was proving that theory perfectly. But sabotage meant desperation, and desperate people make traceable mistakes. Sarah and I spent the next day following paper trails at the courthouse. The musty smell of old documents mixed with Betty the Clerk's coffee created this detective movie atmosphere as we uncovered Victoria's real game. Mountain Vista Resorts had approached the county 6 months ago with plans for a $50 million luxury resort. The proposed location needed my 5 acres as the scenic centerpiece. Spa views, golf course, elevation, helicopter landing pad proximity. According to the development agreement, they couldn't break ground without acquiring all residential properties within the designated tourism corridor. My land wasn't just in Victoria's way, it was the golden key to her treasure chest. "Look at this consultation fee," Betty whispered, pointing to a line buried in county planning documents. $400,000 for community relations consulting. Sarah's coffee cup froze halfway to her lips. "That's not consulting, that's a bribe with a business card." Suddenly, Victoria's aggressive timeline made perfect sense. She wasn't just collecting CAMB fees, she was earning a massive commission for delivering my property to developers. Every day I held out cost her hundreds of thousands of dollars in resort profits. That night, I put my electrician skills to work, installing a comprehensive security system, motion sensors, night vision cameras, the works. If Victoria wanted to escalate to criminal behavior, she'd do it in high-def color. I didn't have to wait long for the feature presentation. Around midnight, a pickup truck crept down my access road with headlights off, engine barely whispering through the mountain silence. The driver, wearing a hoodie that couldn't hide his familiar jawline, began pouring something from a gas can near my lumber pile. My cameras captured everything in perfect detail, including the moment he looked directly into the lens, like a deer caught in headlights. Tommy Ashworth, Victoria's son, 20-something kid who'd apparently inherited his mother's talent for felony-level stupidity. The next morning brought my counterpunch. I walked into the sheriff's office with USB drives full of video evidence. Tommy's midnight arson attempt, complete with facial recognition and license plate identification. Suddenly, Victoria's concerned citizen narrative crumbled faster than her son's alibi under questioning. But I wasn't finished digging. The CAMB's public filings revealed a treasure trove of financial fraud, security consulting payments to companies that didn't exist, landscaping services from Victoria's brother-in-law who lived in Florida, and legal research fees that would make Supreme Court justices blush. Victoria had been systematically looting the CAMB treasury while positioning herself for the resort payoff. She was double-dipping, stealing from neighbors today while planning to cash in on their land tomorrow. As I watched Tommy's arson footage for the 5th time that evening, the mountain air carrying the scent of pine and approaching storm clouds, I realized something crucial. Victoria wasn't just greedy. She was trapped. The resort deal probably had deadlines, and every day I remained meant she risked losing everything. Cornered animals bite hardest just before they die, but they also make the most spectacular mistakes. Victoria's response to her son's arrest was swift, vicious, and completely unhinged. The next morning, I woke to find a process server on my doorstep with an emergency injunction. Victoria was claiming I was building an illegal commercial facility and demanding the court force me to demolish everything immediately. The paperwork alleged I was planning to operate a transient housing operation for undesirable elements that would destroy the moral fabric of our community. The smell of fresh legal ink mixed with morning pine air as I read through 15 pages of creative fiction. Victoria wanted $100,000 in community damages and was asking for an immediate restraining order, preventing me from entering my own property. By noon, 3 county inspectors swarmed my land like locusts: environmental compliance, building safety, septic evaluation, all writing citations for violations that didn't exist. The lead inspector, Rodriguez, kept apologizing under his breath while photographing my perfectly legal electrical work. "Sorry, man," he whispered. "Orders from way above my pay grade. Someone's paying serious money to make your life hell." The metallic taste of corruption hung heavier than the mountain fog rolling in. During my divorce, I'd learned that when legal intimidation fails, bureaucratic harassment becomes the go-to weapon. Endless inspections, impossible compliance demands, death by 1,000 paper cuts. That afternoon, my ex-wife, Linda, called, her voice shaking with fury. "Marcus, what the hell is going on? Emma's friends are showing her Facebook posts calling you a sex offender. She's locked in a room crying, asking if her daddy is really a monster." My blood went Arctic cold. "What posts?" "Some community safety group with your photo and warnings about registered predators targeting children." "Complete lies, but Emma's classmates are treating her like she's contaminated." Linda's voice cracked. "She wants to know if she's safe visiting you anymore." The thought of my 5-year-old daughter reading those lies, having friends whisper and point, made my vision blur with rage. Victoria had weaponized my own child against me, crossing every line that mattered. "It's all fabricated, Linda. I'm fighting a corrupt CAMB trying to steal my land for developers. Fix this," she snapped. "Some judges consider social media scandals harmful to minors. This could affect your custody rights." After she hung up, I sat in Uncle Silas's workshop, surrounded by the scent of old wood and motor oil, feeling 40 years of family history pressing down on me. This wasn't about property anymore. Victoria was threatening my relationship with the only person who truly mattered. But her desperation had created my opportunity. That evening, my neighbor Jake knocked with urgent news. "Marcus, Victoria's group posted another emergency alert, claiming you threatened to burn down the neighborhood. They're using a photo of you holding what looks like a weapon, actually your circular saw, but photographed to look menacing." The Facebook comments were a feeding frenzy. "Call SWAT, armed and dangerous. Protect our children." But Jake leaned closer with the real intelligence. 3 CAMB families approached me privately. "Victoria is threatening their property assessments if they don't sign statements against you. They're terrified of her now, not you." More importantly, CAMB treasurer Beth Morrison had been asking uncomfortable questions about missing money. Victoria had been dodging audit requests while demanding more special assessments from members. Beth found invoices for companies that don't exist. Jake whispered, payments for work never performed. She's demanding a full financial review, and Victoria's panicking. This gave me the counterpunch I needed. I called Sarah immediately. We move now, she said, after I briefed her on the intimidation and Beth's suspicions. Emergency motion for discovery, restraining order against further harassment, and subpoenas for all CAMB financial records. I'll have papers served before the community meeting tomorrow night. Wait, she added, her voice suddenly sharp. There's a line item in their budget for community research services paid to a company called Ashworth Consulting. That's Victoria's husband's company. Sarah's voice dropped to a whisper. That alone is grounds for immediate dissolution of the CAMB board. The community meeting that night felt like walking into a lion's den. Victoria stood at the podium, like a general surveying her troops, her business casual armor polished to intimidation perfection. Tonight, we confront the threat to our community, she began, her voice dripping with rehearsed outrage. The room murmured agreement, heads nodding like synchronized puppets. I sat in the back, feeling every eye eventually turn toward me with varying degrees of suspicion and hostility. When Victoria paused for dramatic effect, I stood up slowly, my work boots heavy on the wooden floor. The room's temperature dropped 20 degrees. Victoria, I said, my voice calm but carrying the weight of a coming storm. Before you continue with these lies, you should know that Sheriff Davidson has your son's arson attempt on video. Gasps rippled through the room, like wind through pines. Victoria's face went the color of old milk. You're lying, she shrieked, pointing a manicured finger at me. I held up my phone, already playing the time-stamped video of Tommy dumping gasoline by moonlight. The room went silent as the unmistakable image of her son filled the screen. Gas can in hand, face illuminated by his own phone flashlight. Victoria lunged for the phone, but two neighbors grabbed her arms, while the video looped the incriminating moment. That's not what it looks like, she screamed, her perfect composure shattered like cheap glass. But the video didn't lie, and neither did the CAMB's financial records that I began distributing from a folder in my hand. Page 7, I said clearly. Special assessment for environmental consulting, $28,000 to a company registered at Victoria's home address. Murmurs turned to outrage as people flipped a page after incriminating page. Page 14, legal research fees of $45,000 to Douglas Krenke, who, as you can see, has never passed the bar exam. Krenke's duct-taped briefcase sat forgotten in the corner, looking more pathetic than ever. And finally, page 22, I said, holding up the document that would end her reign. The Pine Valley CAMB was never legally formed. Your signatures on those covenants? Meaningless. You were scammed by a fake corporation designed to steal your own land. The room exploded into chaos, demands for explanations, accusations flying. Victoria cornered at her podium like a fox in a trap. But I wasn't done. Before Sheriff Davidson arrives with federal investigators, I continued, you should all know about the $50 million resort deal that required Victoria to deliver your properties. Murmurs became shouts as the betrayal sank in. Victoria tried one last desperate play. He's the one who tried to extort us all. I have documents proving he's been threatening residents for months. But Beth Morrison stood up, her voice steady despite trembling hands. Victoria, I found the missing money trail last night. $200,000 transferred to accounts in your husband's name. The room's temperature plummeted again as Victoria's empire cracked before their eyes. I have all the receipts, Beth continued, her voice gaining strength. Every fraudulent transaction, every fake invoice, every dollar stolen from this community. Victoria's face twisted in a final, desperate attempt at control. But it was too late. Sheriff Davidson walked in with two men in suits, their badges gleaming under the fluorescent lights. Victoria Ashworth, you are under arrest for fraud, embezzlement, and conspiracy to commit arson. The click of handcuffs echoed louder than her earlier threats. As they led her away, she locked eyes with me, her expression a toxic mix of rage and ruin. In that moment, I saw the real Victoria, not the CAMB Queen Bee, but a desperate woman who'd built her empire on lies and now watched it burn. 6 months later, the dust settled on a very different mountain. The CAMB dissolved, all fraudulent charges against me dropped, and the recovered funds returned to homeowners. Victoria and her husband faced felony charges, their assets frozen pending trial. Tommy's juvenile record kept him out of adult prison, but he entered a mandatory community service program. And me? The cabin stood completed, a solid symbol of reclaimed ground. Emma visited that first weekend, the two of us sitting on the porch, watching the sunset paint the mountains gold, her head on my shoulder as she whispered, "I knew you weren't a monster, Dad. I always knew." That evening, as storm clouds gathered over the mountains and rain began pattering against my cabin windows, I felt the tide finally turning. Victoria had overplayed her hand, attacking too many fronts simultaneously while her financial crimes were being exposed. But I also knew desperate criminals don't surrender quietly. They detonate everything around them. The smell of approaching rain, mixed with pine sap, reminded me of Uncle Silas's final words about the land having secrets. Tomorrow I would discover exactly what he meant, and Victoria Ashworth would learn that some secrets have the power to destroy entire kingdoms. The next morning, I was prying up floorboards in Uncle Silas's workshop when my crowbar hit something that definitely wasn't wood. The metallic clang echoed through the dusty space, and I dropped to my knees, heart pounding as I cleared away decades of sawdust. There, hidden beneath the floor, was a heavy metal lockbox, rusted with age but intact. My hands, rough from years of electrical work, trembled slightly as I pried open the stubborn latch. Inside lay a thick envelope, yellowed with age, containing Uncle Silas's meticulously recorded land surveys, geological assessments, and most crucially a notarized affidavit stating he'd discovered the property contained commercially valuable mineral deposits. The affidavit was dated 1978, predating the current property boundaries by decades, and clearly showing Silas had owned full mineral rights that made my 5 acres worth millions, not thousands. The developers had known about these deposits when they approached the county, which explained the $50 million resort valuation. My land wasn't just scenic, it was sitting on a gold mine. Victoria's entire scheme had been built on suppressing this information, using the fake CAMB to force me out before I could discover the truth. I called Sarah immediately, my voice steady despite the earthquake in my chest. "Marcus," she breathed after hearing about the mineral rights discovery. "This changes everything. We're not just defending your property anymore, we're building an ironclad case for fraud, conspiracy, and public corruption." The mineral rights affidavit became our nuclear weapon. Sarah filed emergency motions that afternoon, demanding all CAMB records unsealed, and Victoria's consulting contracts scrutinized under conflict of interest laws. By evening, the first cracks appeared in Victoria's facade, when County Commissioner Harlan called me personally. "Mr. Brennan," he said, voice thick with discomfort, "we've discovered some irregularities in the tourism corridor designation process. It appears there may have been undue influence from Mountain Vista developers." Harlan's call was the first domino, but Sarah's legal filings were the avalanche. Within 48 hours, the entire tourism corridor designation was suspended pending federal investigation. Victoria's consulting contracts were terminated, her husband's construction bids disqualified, and the FBI began raiding their home. The recovered CAMB funds, over $1.2 million, were distributed back to homeowners, many of whom used the money to pay off mortgages or fund their children's college tuition. Jake's family used theirs to install a long-dreamed-of home addition. Even Beth Morrison, who'd risked everything as whistleblower, finally replaced her aging minivan. My own settlement from the wrongful CAMB actions, combined with the mineral rights value, meant Emma and I could face the future without financial fear. The cabin became more than a home, it was proof that one determined man could stand against corruption and win. Emma grew stronger through the ordeal, her teenage insecurity replaced by fierce loyalty and quiet strength. The mountain community, once fractured by fear, began healing through shared vindication. Neighbors who had avoided my driveway now stopped by with apologies and offers to help finish the cabin's final details. Even the county inspectors, once tools of harassment, sent official letters acknowledging the false citations and offering expedited permits for future work. The mineral rights assessment came back even better than the affidavit suggested. Rare earth elements worth over $12 million in current market value. Rather than selling to developers, I partnered with a responsible mining company committed to sustainable extraction and community benefits. The revenue stream ensured Emma's education, my retirement security, and funding for a community land trust that protected the remaining mountain properties from future development pressures. Silas's foresight had turned what could have been a lifetime of struggle into generational wealth and community protection. The cabin's front porch, where Emma and I now watch sunsets together, became the heart of a new community gathering spot. Neighbors brought potluck dishes and stories of their own close calls with overreaching authorities, turning what had been a divided valley into a tight-knit support network. The same folks who'd signed Victoria's petitions out of fear now organized volunteer work days to help maintain the community land trust properties. Jake became the informal coordinator, his easygoing nature making him the perfect bridge between old suspicions and new trust. The cabin itself evolved from a symbol of defiance into a beacon of community resilience. Weekends brought barbecues, acoustic guitar sessions, and children playing safely in the open spaces Victoria had once tried to control. The Land Trust, funded by my mineral royalties, purchased additional properties to create buffer zones against future urban sprawl. What had been a battleground became a sanctuary, preserved for generations to come. As for me, the electrician who'd once fixed other people's problems, I'd finally solved my own and discovered that true wealth isn't in bank accounts, but in protecting what you love. The mountain air, once thick with threat, now carried the clean scent of pine and possibility. And somewhere, I like to think Uncle Silas is watching, his eccentric mountain wisdom finally vindicated as the land he loved endures.